my book and wax friends. I'm Amber. If you're new, welcome. Welcome back if you are returning. I post about books and home fragrance goodies, and I'm so happy to have you here for my November wrap up. So this is my books and bars. So the books that I read during the month, and then the home fragrance that I melted to go along with the bars. So if you're only interested in the books, that'll be first, and there will be timestamps throughout. And then I talk about the home fragrance that went with the books at the end. So first up, let's look at my official TBR for the month of November. As you can see, I did not do very well. Out of the 8 books, I only read 2. And then there were 2 DNFs from the TBR as well. So let's first talk about the DNFs. I was kind of feeling slumpy in November. So overall, I read and finished 5 books, which isn't terrible, obviously. Any books read is a win, in my opinion. But 5 is a little on the low side for me. So I was just kind of feeling slumpy, and not a lot of things were grabbing me. But the 2 DNFs that I have to share with you is the first, The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. And I feel bad because this was the book that was voted for my prompt for subscribers picking. This was the winner, and so I feel bad about DNFing it. And going into the book, I was kind of afraid that I might end up DNFing it, just because I did read Rachel Gillig's Shepherd King duology, and although I loved the story, especially in the second book, there was a lot of pretty harsh profanity, which I'm not a fan of. It takes me out of the story when there is, F-bombs all over the place. And unfortunately, that was the case for that. So I knew going into it, even though I really wanted to get into the book, that there could be a lot of that in it. And so I started it. I got through 3 chapters. And yeah, there was just too much in the way of profanity for me. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to stop it because I'm not enjoying it. So unfortunately, I DNF'd that one. Then secondly, the second book I DNF'd from my TBR is The League of Gentle Women Witches by India Holton. I do enjoy India Holton's writing, especially her Love's Academic books. That is my favorite series. This is the second book in, I can't even remember what this series is called. But it's the second book in her first series. And I thought it was funny. I got about halfway through it. It was funny. It was a fun romp, but there was a lot. It was very lusty. All of it, there was a lot in compared to her other books, in that it was all physical between the 2 main characters. And I just wasn't into reading that. And it was to the point where I was like, I'm not going to skip it. I'm just going to DNF it. So unfortunately, I decided to DNF that one. Okay. But let's move on to the ones that I did read fully for the month. The first one that I read, and let me get to my notes, because being an old fogey now, it's hard to remember, especially when you read a lot of books. It's hard to remember. So I have to put down notes. Okay. The first one I finished, and this was on my 25 in 25 books to read, so I'm happy that I read it. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. First time reading this. I've read Wuthering Heights, which is by her sister. This one I liked a lot better than Wuthering Heights. I honestly did not like Wuthering Heights. If you love it, that's okay, but I hated like absolutely every character in that book, which is why I didn't like the book. But we're talking about Jane Eyre. So Jane Eyre is about Jane Eyre, who is an orphan, and she moves in with, at the beginning of the book, she moves in with her uncle's wife and children. Her uncle has passed away, and the wife is not a fan of raising her, thinks she's of the devil, pretty much. She thinks she's a terrible person and doesn't want her there. And so after that, she ends up going to boarding school and becoming a governess is where the bulk of the story takes place. She becomes a governess for a man named Mr. Rochester, and then there's a lot of things that happen after that. I knew quite a bit of the story already, but there were things that I didn't know, like after what happens with Mr. Rochester and being a governess there. I wasn't familiar with it from that point. So that was new to me. I enjoyed it. I really liked Jane Eyre as a character. For the most part, there were some things where I felt like she was too easily persuaded, but then she finally got to the point where she was standing her ground and not being persuaded about things that she knew she didn't want. And so I like to see that growth, but that was more towards the end of the book. And she realizes certain things about herself and what she wants in her life. So I did really enjoy that. I enjoyed the mystery, although, again, I kind of knew going into the story what that mystery was. So it wasn't a surprise for me. But I still liked how the setup happened and the like gothic spooky elements to it. I liked Mr. Rochester for the most part. He's not like a new book boyfriend or anything like that for me, but I understood his plight and I enjoyed him. She comes across some other characters after everything that happens with Mr. Rochester that I didn't like so much. There were two female characters that I did like, but their brother, I was not a fan of him at all. And I was worried for the way the story was going to go, because like I said, the last quarter of the book I wasn't familiar with, so I was worried about it. Overall, I highly recommend this book. My rating, I would give a 4.25. I am very happy I read it. It's not my favorite classic ever, but I enjoyed it, and it was better than Wuthering Heights. Again, if you love that book, that's totally okay. Just my opinion. But yeah, 4.25 for Jane Eyre. Okay, next I read the book called Vespertine. This is by Margaret Rogerson, and sorry for the glare. It's very dark and cloudy out, so I have to do this. So this was for the Prompt YA book, and this was the same author that wrote Sorcery of Thorns, which I really loved, and Enchantment of Ravens, and that one was really good too. So I went into this one. I've put it off for a while reading it just because the premise kind of made me nervous. It is about a girl. They live in this world where spirits are prevalent. They are not at rest because of this plague thing that happened. And so for a spirit to be at rest, the clergy in that land, it's not, like I said, it's a fantasy land, but the clergy there, the nuns and the priests and whatnot, they have to sanctify a body, otherwise the spirit to move on. Otherwise the spirit will roam the earth pretty much, and cause havoc, and turn into different types of spirits depending on how the person died. So going into it, I was like, oh, is this going to feel like super dark and kind of spooky, scary for me, uncomfortable? Because it can be like, possession, that sort of thing. Well, I ended up really enjoying it. So the girl, the main character is named Artemisia, and she lives in this nunnery with other girls that she's being trained to be one of the sisters that can help in regards to sanctifying the bodies so that the spirits are at rest. And then something happens to where there's an attack on where they live, and she ends up calling forth this super powerful spirit called a revenant by touching this artifact that the revenant is stuck in, and he ends up becoming like a part of her, kind of, to where he's like, they use their powers together, so she can use him and is able to defeat the attack that's come on to the nunnery. Well, then she ends up going to the main capital in the land because she now has this revenant in her, which is super rare to have. They're the most powerful of the spirits, and it's all about finding out that there's corruption and something happening. Why are these other spirits attacking when they don't normally do that, type of thing. And so I enjoyed it. It wasn't spooky at all for me because it was a fantasy element. It wasn't, the spirits aren't like devils. They're not like devilish. So if you are concerned about that, just to let you know. So it's not something that, in my opinion, is scary, dark. But just so you're aware, I wanted to let you know about it. So for me, I rated this 4 stars, no content in it from what I remember. Maybe a couple like minor profanities, but other than that, there's not. And this is not, there's no romance at all. I could see where this would continue. It felt like it's a standalone, but I could see where the author could continue the story if she wanted. So maybe in the future, if she does, there could be a romance, but as of this book, there's no romance at all. So Vespertine, I did enjoy it, 4 stars. Okay, after that, I did finish an audiobook. I finished up the Caraval series. Again, this was a reread for me. So I finished Finale by Stephanie Garber. And I still am not a fan of the audiobook, but I enjoyed, I think this was my favorite this time around in the reread. Whereas the first time I read with my eyeballs, the second book was my favorite. But I think Finale was my favorite this time around. And I rated it 4 stars, which I think it was like 3.75 last time, something like that. But this is about 2 sisters. This is the 3rd book, so I'm not going to spoil it. But it is about 2 sisters who live on this island with their father, who's like the governor of the island, and he's abusive, and they want to escape the island. And they get an invite from a man named Legend, who invites them to go to what is called Caraval, which is a game that they can win. If they win, they get a wish. And so that's where the first book starts, and it for sure goes in other directions. There is a game in the second book. This book, there is not a game, but they're dealing with a lot of other things. So there's no reason that there would be a game. But there is a game still in the second one, but it involves other things too. So I do enjoy the series. I really like the series, and I recommend them to read my favorite, one of my God tier series, which is the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, which is the follow-up series to Caraval. So even if you only enjoyed Caraval a little bit, I'd say still give Once Upon a Broken Heart a try, because it's magical and whimsical and romantic and sweet, And it's just the best. I just love that series so much. So anyway, but I was happy to reread Caraval. That way I can reread that again with fresh remembrance from what happened, because it does tie in. Things in this book do tie into the other one, not to where you would be confused if you didn't read Caraval. You would still understand what happens in Once Upon a Broken Heart, that trilogy, but I do for sure recommend still that you read Caraval first, that trilogy. But it's not absolutely necessary if you don't have any interest. Okay, moving on from that, the next book I read and finished is Sipsworth by Simon Van Bowie, and this was for the prompt: pick a musician, shuffle their songs, and find a book that fits that song. So I picked Blue October, and the song that I got was Daylight, and I felt like that fit this book well. And so this one is about an older lady named Helen Cartwright. She moves back to England after years living in Australia, because her husband and son have passed away. And so she moves back to England where she grew up, and she's just pretty much waiting to pass on herself so she can be with her family again. And so she doesn't have much of a life, and she keeps to herself. And one day she sees someone throw out like a fish tank, and she was like, with some stuff in it, and she's like, what is that? What did they throw out? And so she went and picked it up, and from there she ends up finding that there's like a little mouse that's hanging out and living in this fish tank that's been thrown away. And so it's a story about Helen and her relationship that comes from the little mouse, and how it gets her to look at life differently and to open herself up to life, to realizing that life isn't over, even when hard things happen and you lose people that you love. I enjoyed this book a lot. I liked the found family aspect. I loved the relationship between Helen and Sipsworth, that's the name of the mouse. I thought it was so sweet. It was so cute. I felt though like a halfway through the book, or maybe even a little more, 3/4 of the way through the book, there was kind of a twist to it that for me came out of the blue. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, this kind of took a little bit of a turn that I wasn't expecting. I didn't like dislike it, but you find out things about Helen that didn't seem, it came out of the blue. And so for me, I'm like, oh, okay, well, all right. That's cool. That is cool. The development, it just was like a sudden development, whereas there was no like glimmers, at least from my reading it. I didn't pick up on any like glimmers or any like slow character traits to lead to this. It was just like a sudden thing. I don't want to spoil anything, but... And so I wasn't the biggest fan of that, because it almost felt out of character from the first 3/4 of the book almost. But other than that, I did really enjoy it. I gave this a 3.75 stars. I did enjoy it, but it didn't give me those 5-star feels, unfortunately. Next up, though, a book that I really ended up loving is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. And this is the fourth book. This is the 4th book I've read by Brandon Sanderson. This is a standalone, one of his secret projects that he did. And this is about, and this book has so many pretty illustrations. Well, the front. Anyway, this one doesn't have, this isn't the fancy special edition that has a ton of illustrations, but it's still pretty on its own. So I read this, sorry guys, I read this with audiobook mainly. I was reading it with my eyes too, but for the most part I read it through audiobook. And it's about a girl named Yumi and Painter, and they have a Freaky Friday situation that happens to them where Yumi, who is a girl who lives in this place that is very desolate, and there's not really like light or water, not a lot of stuff. It's a very desolate place. There is light in that there's this huge sun, but they don't have like electricity or, you know, they don't have anything like that. And she is this special person called a yokahijo, I think it's something like that. If I'm remembering right, it's something like that, who is able to do art creations through rocks, through stacking rocks. And this entices spirits in the land to her, to where those spirits then, if they're pleased with her artwork, she's able to get them to help people in the different villages that she goes to. And so that's what she does. And then on the other end, Painter, whose real name is, what was his name? Oh yeah, Nicaro. He is a nightmare painter. And they live in this land, on this world where it's pretty much dark all the time. There's this like veil around them that has like nightmares that come out of it. And these nightmares are actually feed on people when they're sleeping, and eventually become more and more like solid, more and more mortal, not just spirity. And so the nightmare painters, through their painting things, are able to dismiss these nightmares and are able to defeat them. So that's what Nicaro does. And so they're, through extenuating circumstances, Nicaro and Yumi end up connected. And there's a whole thing, they're trying to figure out why they're connected to each other. When one person is awake, one person kind of takes over their body, the other person's body, and vice versa. So they go to both of their lands, both of their planets, and have to figure out, why is this happening? What is going on? And so that's the gist of the story. I really loved it. I loved the progression of Yumi and Nicaro individually, and how Yumi and Nicaro end up finding themselves through the relationship together. They both end up finding out things that they didn't realize. Some truths come out that they weren't aware of beforehand. And there is a found family aspect that ends up coming to pass for them as well. I love the relationship together and how they end up growing together. And it was so sweet, and it made me cry. And it had some very heartfelt moments, but there were some funny moments as well. I love the mystery aspect of it, and what ends up happening in regards to that mystery. And yeah, I really loved it. So this was a 5-star read for me. I adored Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. Highly recommend this one, even if you haven't read anything else by Sanderson. You can read this. So there are things in it that are like Easter eggs, but they're not things that are going to make you confused. So this is a standalone in its own right. So you can read it without reading any of his other Cosmere books. So I loved it. So I ended the month on a high note, and I'm very excited about that. So of the books, I only had 3 that I read with my eyeballs. So I don't usually melt anything with audiobook. Well, I mean, I do, because I'm always melting something. But in regards to pairing it with a book, I didn't. So the 3 books that I did have wax for is, the first one is Jane Eyre. So for Jane Eyre, I chose Cider and Crimson Berries. And this is I chose this one because it's a kind of like an old-fashioned scent to my nose, in that it feels moody. It feels like perfect for the gothic vibes of Jane Eyre. This is a deep, dark cidery scent, and for me, I felt it was the perfect choice for the book. So what did I say it's called? Cider and Crimson Berries. I always want to switch it and say crimson and cider berries for some reason. Okay, and then for the next one that I did melt a wax with is Vespertine. So this one I did have some more pumpkin, and I decided to do this one just because of the whole spooky aspect to it. It's not spooky as in like Halloween-y, but this scent has a kind of a smoky quality to it a little bit, along with because it's s'more. It's pumpkin and graham cracker and a toasted marshmallow is kind of what the notes are. And so I was like, you know what, that one would be a good choice for the book. And then for the last one, which is Sipsworth, this one I did Cocoa Cashmere. And this one I chose because that cashmere quality to it, since the story is about an older lady. To me, this isn't like a scent that I would say is like an old lady scent necessarily, but when I smell it, I feel like it's like an older, refined perfume. There's cashmere, there's like a cocoa butter quality to it, sweetness. I think there's vanilla. I can't remember the exact notes, but all that is always linked down below for you in the description. My website's down there, so you can look at the notes if you need to. But this is really pretty. It's a really pretty scent, and I felt like it was the perfect choice for Sipsworth. So that is Cocoa Cashmere. So that's it, you guys. So I was able to be a little more concise in regards to my wrap up this time, and I'm very happy about that, since I tend to ramble. So I'm trying to get better at being a little more concise. So that's it. Tell me how many books, if you read anything in November, how many books did you read? And what was your favorite read of November? I always like to know those things. And if you're not feeling chatty, please leave a little mouse emoji down in the comments for Sipsworth, because he is just the cutest thing. Comments help me out. I appreciate all of you guys. Please like and subscribe too if you want more book and home fragrance content from me. I appreciate you all and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Until next time, TTFN and Merry Christmas. Ta-ta.